welcome everyone to this latest edition of Neighborhood Scope. Today, of course, we are going to be discussing the recent bash-up between India and Pakistan. And it is quite a deliberate decision to have a purely Indian panel today so that we can do a kind of a stock taking of how events have unfolded and what are the lessons learned and what are the things that we can maybe do much better the next time around, because at least I am convinced there will be a next time. It could be sooner or it could be a little later, but there will be another bash-up coming. And we'll probably during the course of this session, might get an opportunity to say why I think it'll happen. We have a great panel today. We have one of the most erudite and cerebral generals in the Indian Army, General Raj Shukla, who is currently with the UPSC, but continues to take very keen interest in all matters defense. We have Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, who has served as High Commissioner in all the hotspot countries like Pakistan and Canada, and he is out here today. We have Manoj Joshi, Distinguished Fellow at ORF, who has studied insurgency, studies China very closely, and is one of the leading strategic scholars in India. We have another colleague, Soumya Awasthi, who is doing a lot of work on strategic communications, information warfare. And last but not the least, we have Nirupama Subramanian, who's a journalist of great repute and has served in Islamabad, I think with the Hindu, if I'm not mistaken, and was there for at least 3 years, if 4 years. So she has been in Islamabad, and we will try and get some idea from her how things are looking across the Great Divide. But let me start by putting the first question to General Raj Shukla. General Shukla, it's often been said that between India and Pakistan, if you have a short, sharp fight, both sides are evenly balanced. But if you have a longer duration kind of a conflict, then India's greater national power comes to bear. But this time around, what we have seen is that in the short, sharp knife fight, as many people like to call it, the Indians seem to have gotten better off of the Pakistanis. And in just 3 days, literally forced the Pakistanis to sue for peace. Or at least a ceasefire. I think talking about peace between India and Pakistan is quite a stretch, but at least sue for a ceasefire. Were you surprised by the kind of domination that India was able to enforce in just about 3 days? Literally, because, there have been honorary field marshals who retired as majors who have been predicting that the Indian Air Force is a terrible force and that it'll get worsted in any conflict. India's the Chinese radar systems and the Chinese air defense systems are like next level stuff. All of that seems to have come a cropper. So was the Chinese mal, and the Turkish drones, which created waves all over the place, simply failed? Or did we do something which was quite magical?
Sushant, I really think, I was surprised. Because I think we have exceeded all my expectations as a military professional. And 2, I think we have rediscovered the utility of force. Now, that is a very significant thing. See, I'll just take you back to the Parliament attack and 26/11. Around that time, Mr. Arun Shore expressed the frustration or the mood of those times when he said, not an eye for an eye, not a tooth for a tooth, for an eye, both the eyes, for a tooth, the whole jaw. You had another prominent politician mocking the Indian Air Force, saying, भाई जब भी आपकी ज़रूरत पड़ती है ना आप ग्वालियर से उड़ते हैं और अम्बाला में लैंड कर जाते हैं. And he was not wrong. That was the impression of the instrument of force. It was not used. And third is Mr. Gill, who gave us some very good professional advice when he said, you will never win the war on terror merely by chasing terrorists, but also by overwhelming the adversary. So in one line, I would say Ops Sindoor has converted the mood, the wisdom of those times into a military strategic reality. And I'll just, want to give you two quotes. Say, Parakram. Look at the second point I'm making is remarkable politico-military synergy and convergence. I read out to you what Mr. Jaswant Singh said about Parakram. I mean, I reread this today morning and I was surprised. He says the objectives of India's mobilization were to defeat cross-border infiltration without conflict, to contain the national mood of teaching Pakistan a lesson. I mean, this is Mr. Jaswant Singh. So this is the politico-military synergy that we saw this time was pretty remarkable. As far as the military metrics are concerned, if I may just sum up in one line, of the 3-4 nights, we suffered some kind of a reverse on one metric because the way the politico-military dynamic played out, we said we will first strike the terror target. So without doing SIAD, with any military man knows. But once we recovered from that, what we did, Sushant, is we have dreamt of in war games, all those airfields which have been taken out. It's just remarkable. I don't want to go through all that, but remarkable. And before that, that military targeting, all the military psyche was, don't escalate, so Muzaffarabad or Balakot. Here you hit the heart of Punjab. I have commanded Bhatinda Corps. Bahawalpur was my opposite number. This Markaz is a veritable training academy. It is a firing range, a mine range, all kinds of stuff. In swift retort, there was some kind talk of hitting it, but we never hit it. So that is why I would underline this. We have rediscovered the utility of force. In India's statecraft and strategic evolution, it's a major milestone. We've never done it in the past. I'm quoting to you what Mr. Jaswantan also. The second thing, which is this calling this schoolboy nuclear bluff, is very significant again. If you go back to Parakram, so Parakram happens, you mobilize. Then in the midst of Parakram, Kaluchak, it was a massacre military station. And what does Hamid Gul do? 2 days later, red lines. And all aims of going are just, it was unwise those days to even think of it. So this schoolboy bluff of terror that we have, and I would also like to question the whole rationale as it developed. Look at the strategic rationale. Nuclear weapons are serious business if you study them in depth. Nuclear weapons are, the strategic rationale is you use them when you have an existential threat. And here these chaps were, saying nuclear cover, terror rampage. And the globe was buying this argument. Such a futile, obnoxious argument, it was being bought. So, I want to give full credit to the political leadership, also the military leadership. I'll tell you why. In the past, and I've been privy to that personally, when we were faced with such things, the military would also pull out a parchi. Ki bhai, ye nahi hai, ye nahi hai, ye nahi hai, ye nahi, kya kare? This time they didn't do it. Both clicked wonderfully, and therefore we've got these results. So, in conclusion, in the opening round, I would say, Pakistan was allowed to punch notches above its strategic weight because we were punching way below our strategic weight. So we have rediscovered the utility of force. But I agree with you. Henceforth, things are going to get only more difficult. So I would say, if I may just be allowed to say so, thus far it is 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, in my view.
So it's even in the past pash-ups that we've had, we've always seen that, initially the Indian armed forces seem to suffer some kind of a setback. We saw that in Kargil, we saw that subsequently. And then they seem to regroup, but this time they did it rather fast, very quickly, and they countered it. But on this whole SIAT thing, the question is that we didn't do it in the first instance, but then how did everything work out so well? Because obviously, while if we were trying to suppress their air defenses, surely they must be having something, or they didn't expect that we would do something like that. What do you think happened?
So the moment we said that we will carry out SIAD, means hit the radars and all that, they fell apart. That is what is so surprising. They just fell apart. The HQ9 and all that stuff, they have, in the whole narrative, they have just spun the first night narrative. But in aggregate, they have nothing to say. And I know this on pretty strong terms that it is their DGMO who came to our DGMO and said, please. I mean, I'm telling you, so therefore it is a real remarkable win. Also, see, one thing we have to be clear. Parakram, let's get back. The Indian military was a lumbering force. Mobilization, 3 weeks, 22 months and nothing. This time we were, what shall I say, somewhat a force of long-range precision. So even all the stuff that you saw from Hammer and Scalp to what the army had, Loiter and all that, so people have been following the Ukraine conflict very carefully. So all this has to be given credit. So this non-contact kinetics work. So even the instrument of force has metamorphosed greatly. But I would say in the future, we should become even more precise and calibrated. So next time, not take out the uncles and brother-in-laws of Masood Azhar, but take out Masood Azhar, just like the US takes out Soleimani. So you have to get precise, calibrated, and areas we need to invest in is where we are underinvested. Space. See, I make this point. The Chinese have 14,000 satellites in LEO. When we say we are good in space, ISRO will never give you military capacities. Military capacities will come from LEO. The Chinese have 14,000. The Americans have 42,000. We have none. We are absent in the LEO space. If you are not in the LEO space, you will not get positioning, you will not get communications. So if we refine these areas, we'll be a pretty strong military. I think the military also has realized its great worth here. So I would go back to that. In sum, it is India rediscovering the utility of force. And utility, it's not a military jackbooting around the world. It's professional, calibrated. That's the military we should all be proud of. But we can improve in many areas. And just one thing, Sushant, our flank of decision was poised to strike and held back. So, I mean, the Pakistanis really got it this time. They are aware of all this. The Navy was poised. And what happened, I think, was that they had just come back from Topak, a full-fledged exercise, so they just reloaded and went out. So, I mean, in most domains, honestly, in military metrics, we seem to have done very well.
Ajay, if I can just come to you. Do you think what has happened over the last 4-5 days has suitably chastened Pakistan, or do you think they will be itching for a comeback? Last time we did Balakot, it's taken 6 years for them to do something like a Pahalgam. Do you think the next round, and there will be a next round, I don't think we should kid ourselves, there will be a next round. Do you think it will happen sooner rather than later? How do you think the Pakistanis are going to now respond to the kind of drubbing which they seem to have got?
Well, to begin with, the Pakistanis are celebrating victory, so as they've always done. So it's reasonable to assume that the deterrence has been reimposed. We set up a deterrence with Balakot, and you could debate whether that deterrence wore off or whether that deterrence was overcome by factors internal to Pakistan, that is Asim Munir's problems and his view that this was the short war with India was the solution to consolidate his position internally, and he would have hoped to have done this with this episode and have manufactured this narrative of victory. But the problem, as General Shukla says, is that the extent of the differential and the battleground differential and the defeat would now enter Pakistan's calculus. So there would be a new sort of deterrence, and for Pakistan, it enters their calculus that the next strike, Sindoor was Balakot plus, but the next one would be Sindoor plus. So would they have the appetite to take it? My sense is the appetite will be very low for a while. Now, having said this, I would agree with your starting proposition that it's not a question of if, it's a question of when the next one comes. And as the PM said, basically the rhetorical flourish was Operation Sindoor is on, which means that this is a pause, that when the next attack comes, the answer will be different. But in the opening, let me ask the question: how was this different from the last time? And your question on how will the next time be different? How can it be different? General Shukla has already talked about how different it can be militarily, but how different will it be diplomatically and in terms of the relationship? If you look at the whole Pulwama Balakot episode, which is the one before this, it played out 15 days, right, from Pulwama to Balakot. In this case, Pahalgam to ceasefire, it was 20 days. But in many ways, Op Sindoor and the first 7th May operation was the next rung of Op Bandar. Because Op Bandar, you said, you stopped by saying, I threaten missiles will land if I don't get my pilot back. And it worked. You got your pilot back and you didn't exercise the next rung option, which would have been the case even then, because the answer to Pakistan's Operation Swift Retort would have been the first stage of what we saw on the 7th of May. So essentially, what we will see next, it will be expected to be a firmer response than Op Sindoor. And now, in terms of diplomacy, that is the beauty of the Indian doctrinal shift. Now, this, what was used to be a security posture, is now an announced new doctrine for ourselves, for Pakistan, and for the world. And which means that when your next attack comes, the world will be expecting, oh my God, here comes Sindoor plus. And therefore, the diplomacy will become easier. And let me then talk about the diplomacy. While agreeing with everything General Shukla has said, in this case, the synergy between the diplomacy and the military was very strong. And the diplomacy was riding on the back of military power. So it can be no one's case that the diplomacy helped get you the ceasefire. The hard power and the battering Pakistan got on the 7th of May and then on the 10th of May in the morning is what brought Pakistan to the table. Even on the 7th of May, I understand the DGMO told his counterpart, we've done this, we've struck 9 camps, and we are done. If you want to get off this escalation ladder, please do. We don't need anything more. So this was the proposition. But since Pakistan escalated, the answer came on 10th May. So all the diplomacy was clearly riding, and therefore I would say the synergy was political, military, diplomatic, on the back of this military action. And the diplomacy was hugely successful. There was no condemnation, no UNSC resolution asking India to back off or anything of that sort. Largely a lot of global support. And, I think a lot of what the US did has been misinterpreted. For instance, the US role has always been and was this time that of an amplifier, not a mediator. Because what US diplomats go and tell Islamabad, look, the Indians are angry, they're going to do something, why don't you back off? And this is exactly what the diplomacy was doing, supporting the hard power. So it wasn't that there was an attempt by the Americans, notwithstanding the quick credit taken by President Trump. Even the Americans will say, okay, don't go by the tweets of our president, go by what we say. So I think it was a spectacular achievement. It was a spectacular military achievement, first and foremost, but the diplomacy and the political will was supporting this to have a successful moment.
Ask you a follow-up. We were on a podcast together and we were discussing why Pahalgam might have happened, and we narrowed down to three reasons. One was that Kashmir was a dead issue. The Pakistanis wanted to get it back into, get the eyeballs back on Kashmir. Second was regime consolidation. The regime was in great trouble, and nothing better than to rally the people behind the dictator or the quasi-dictator or the false dictator, whatever you want to call him, and the puppet government. And third was that there was a raging insurgency, which the Pakistanis blame on us in Balochistan and KP, and so yeah, it's payback. Now, of course, the raging insurgency has started raging even more over the last week or so, with the kind of attacks that are being launched out there. But on the other two, do you think Kashmir is back on the international diplomatic agenda? One. And secondly, do you think the regime is consolidated, or do you think this is just temporary?
So I would argue that of the three objectives you mentioned, only one has been achieved, and that too temporarily, which is Asim Munir consolidates his position because he gets people to support him in this time of jingoism and in this time of a manufactured narrative of Pakistan's victory. And, the Pakistani papers are saying exactly what the headlines are here, new normal. They're saying new normal. Kashmir reignited, India defensive, Pakistan rising, and so on. So they will push down this strange cola down their people's throats, and Asim Munir will try to beat down the PTI, which has strongly objected to him and globally campaigned against him. They will try to he'll quell the dissent within the army because he's given himself and a long term. But I think on the other two objectives, there will be no change. It will be reversed because India's instinct, even to humor people on having a conversation about Jammu and Kashmir, will have gone completely. So even the US position, despite all this that Trump may have tweeted, continues to be the same. We will be involved in this situation if both parties ask us to. So if you really press someone in the State Department, they'll say there's no change in that position. So there is no internationalization of Kashmir. Kashmir remains an internal issue. The healing in Kashmir is going on post Article 370. Democracy is part of that healing. And the external conversations on the borders with Pakistan will be, yes, we can discuss with foreign countries the issues of the border, but this is about POK. So I think there is no move. And on the insurgency within, this has really got, I think, all the 1,000 mutinies in Pakistan excited because it feels that, this force can be bested. They see the reality. They don't buy the narrative being given by the Pakistan army that the army has been shown to be extremely weak, and that will only promote and provoke these insurgencies to become more intense.
We've heard about the military side of things. You've heard about the diplomatic side of things, but let's start talking about strategic communications and how those happened over the last week or 10 days. Do you think we were slow to come off the blocks on that one? In the sense that it seemed that by the time we started getting our act together, uh, a lot of things had already happened. And in this day and age of instant, real time communications, where messages, fake news, all sorts of things are happening, uh, we were not able uh, to get ahead of the curve in that sense. So, do you think there were some lessons that we need to have learned from this particular episode? I know lessons for government to learn are the next impossible thing, but what in your assessment, how did this information war thing play out?
Thank you, Sushant. Like everybody is discussing a lot about how diplomacy. Am I audible? Okay. So, how diplomacy was running on the back of military in India, I feel that in Pakistan, when we talk about how it was going, I think it was more of military running on the back of information warfare or the strategic communication that was going on, because it's right time to recognize that today's wars are no more just missiles and militaries, but also about misinformation and information warfare. So perception management narrative becomes an integral part of the today's warfare. So, like I said, before I talk about what were the lessons learned for India and where were we on the block, I would like to shift the discussion a little bit on how Pakistan's strategic community or communication works. So, starting with number one, a state engineered for narrative manipulation. Because it's systematic, it is embedded in their DNA, and its propaganda arm, the ISPR, Inter-Service Public Relations, has curated a very powerful ecosystem within the country, which is controlling narratives. It's not just aimed at their external adversaries, but also within their own country amongst their citizens. One of the examples that I want to put here, and it's on the lighter side, in 1990s, there was a 14-episode series which was produced by the ISPR, which was called as Alpha Bravo Charlie. And this series basically tried to put the military officers of the Pakistan Army into a very modest, devout, and self-sacrificing patriots, sharing meals in steel plates, values, religious moral values. So they were trying to be projected as a very righteous soldiers, and there is no hierarchy. People are connecting with each other at a very casual level, and messes were shown. So it's basically perception was being built, and it became part of the process, that how the people of Pakistan are moved by these shows and have this as a use it as a soft power to weaponize and disguise in the disguise of entertainment, basically. And today, the same is used, or the psychological tactic is being used in the social media as well. So while Indian anchors uphold dignity, apart from maybe some one or two yelling on the national screen and showing tanks and bullets being fired
No,
on the
but listen,
screen, but
yelling was done by those guys also. They are
yeah,
trying to act holier than thou.
but
So
we
there
still
was,
maintain dignity out of all this. But when you look at Pakistan's media, I was kind of amazed or at laughed at, also on a couple of occasions, when they actually went on to the extent of dramatizing the whole victimhood narrative, to the extent of some female anchors weeping on the screen, taking the cue and crying about how our soldiers are dying and India is being a dragon and eating us up. So ISPR's genuine genius lies in converting defeat into defiance and humiliation into heroism. That is number one. The second was actually the digital warfare machine that ISPR has converted into. It is spending almost 600 crores on in Pakistani rupees, actually, on annual operations, and it is training annually around 4,000 information warfare specialists and grooms interns and direct IS under the direct ISI oversight. So this is an interesting paper which is written by Mr. Jitin. He talks about it in detail in his paper. but I'm just picking up from there that it also includes to the extent of familiarization of tours of nuclear sites and military installations to these interns. These operatives drive misinformation campaigns, targets Kashmiris, and with radicalizing content and flood social media with coordinated propaganda. So back few years back, Major General Ghafoor, when he was heading the ISPR, he was actually called as Twitter General as well, because he sort of got the trend started, or then made hashtags a new normal. So, and for example, take the post Balakot strike. India's operational success was drowned by Pakistani narratives. But within hours, ISPR launched hundreds of AI enhanced hashtags, deep fake voiceovers. We saw what they did about General Suchindra's going against Mr. Modi. And so there has been a lot of these kinds of, ISPR has been kind of prompt on all these things. So this is no more just a warfare, but and there are more tools into it, which is digital, ideological, and psychological. And quickly, I will just go on to the Chinese hand in it.
Forget the Chinese
Okay.
right now, but I just have a follow-up on
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
So, of course, news channels have been quite shrill, partly understandable, partly cringe. But the thing is that there was a lot of criticism of news channels on the second, I think the night of 8th and 9th, because suddenly there were these reports coming out, Karachi has been bombed and everything.
Yeah.
And then the next day, everybody lampooned and lambasted the channels that, what kind of reporting is it?
Yeah.
But that evening, or was it the evening next, we learned that actually Karachi had been bombed. Now, somewhere we missed the thing that somebody gave that information but did not say where Karachi had been bombed, or where Lahore had been bombed, or where Gujranwala had been bombed, or which are the other places which had been bombed. All those places which the news channels were saying were bombed had been bombed. Now, in Karachi, everybody assumed, because the perception in India is Karachi is only the port, right? Nobody even knows that Malir Cant in Karachi is the Cant of Karachi, cantonment of Karachi. And it was Malir Cant, again, not the whole of Malir Cant, but there was a particular radar site which had been bombed, which in itself is pretty significant, if you ask me. But so it had been bombed, but the news channels were emblazoning, and then people, including somebody like Arun Shourie, has gone ballistic.
I wanted to come to that.
Without understanding what exactly had happened, and even the news channels were so dumb that they did not clarify. So my question is that all of this happened. Now, could that information flow not have been handled in a more sensible manner, so that it wasn't exaggerated the way it was, but it actually gave the information which was actually true?
So yeah, the information was not handled properly, I would say, at the first in the first reaction, because I think somewhere India's response or reaction that they give is not very offensive. It's more of a reactive. They have a very fragmented way of going about it. Although initially we did lose opportunity of going out and countering those narratives which are being built, but at the same time, if you see, within 24 hours or less than 48 hours, basically, we picked up our loose ends and we tightened our grip. And we used many other platforms to verify and fact check. So PIB was at on toes all through the operation. And apart from that, even the bureaucracy.
If we are now going to depend on PIB, I think then
But
the information
yes,
game is
so
lost.
coming back to-
with all
yeah,
due respect
no,
to
no.
the PIB guys.
No, I agree to you.
But,
So-
government cannot listen. This is what I can't understand. Government cannot handle at a central level, at a bureaucratic level. You can't handle this thing.
But
So they have to figure out some way of doing it. But
I also
PIB
feel that
is not the way.
yeah. So
I'll just
narrative was definitely not there, and we didn't do as much as Pakistani could do, the damage that they could do, and only because we were not prepared. We are not culturally prepared to do it. Now I think there will be a lot of lessons that we will learn out of it. We need to use more algorithmic studies so that the moment there is any narrative which is not approved, is flagged immediately and comes down, because we have to use technology to our advantage rather than just leaving it for the public. Because what I observed was that Indians were also, the citizens were getting into these low level banters with Pakistanis, often going into abusive methods, rather than countering it with facts. Countering it with facts and figures would have been better. So maybe an organized way of going about it.
That's a cultural thing. It's
yeah,
fine.
so institutionalizing this whole countering the narrative would be a better way to approach the situation.
Sushant, one quick question for Soumya. So is the case that there was no information warfare emerging out of India at all? Is that the understanding?
No, we
Late.
did. It was late. It was not timely, and it was not coming out quickly. That whole problem there was of time. We were losing the time, because by the time we come out with 1,000 tweets, there were already 4,000 or 5,000
Not only
tweets.
tweets.
So it was just overwhelmed. But the audience was overwhelmed with so much of propaganda. And if you understand algorithm, you will see that the moment we start hitting on the Pakistani tweets, our own tweets were getting swamped. So they were getting overlapped by these Pakistani tweets. So if you just study that, you will realize that even though we were making our efforts, but because it lagged, it was fragmented, as I say, and it was not organized and institutionalized at the right time. That's why we lost some kind of counter narrative in
I
time.
wanted to say something before I come to Manoj. Sorry.
See, look at the Pakistani narrative. I mean, Najam Sethi saying that Pahalgam was a false flag operation. I mean, they're incredulous.
Why does it surprise
It
you that he
surprised
said
me
something
because
like that?
I thought he was a sensible child.
That's a you problem, not a him problem.
And look at this low IQ narrative of the DG ISPR that missiles will be fired from Adhampur to Amritsar. Come on, yeah.
And
the
he
third-
doesn't say that we fired the missile and then we brought them down also.
And
So,
third
yeah.
one is
Be
this Suchindra mutinying against the Prime Minister. I mean, who believes it? Yeah?
No, there's another one they came out with that there is a big protest happening in the air headquarters against the Air Chief Marshal, and then they were saying that electricity has gone off in Delhi, and I said, "Yaar, Gurgaon mein to वैसे भी नहीं आती, but perfect electricity was coming. So if their
Sushant,
cyber attacks were giving me good electricity, I don't mind."
In the staff college, when you teach young majors how to do informations, they come up with better things here.
Yeah.
And this is a professional ISPR. But on the other point, Soumya, the R narrative, while there may be some stuff like that, wasn't the military narrative far better?
But it
Because-
came late.
I did follow that more closely.
Because otherwise
actually,
that crow thing would have come.
Yeah.
But that came late. That
Yeah.
came
So the
late.
AGDIP was more proactive in ADGPI. Sorry, was more proactive in clarifying those and countering those narratives which are fake in nature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Manoj, first, is there any nuclear radiation taking place? Because there's so much talk of it. Damn, the whole world is on an edge. And I'm asking this also because, again, there is so much of noise. Somebody as experienced as you can make some sense of it. There is one set of opinion which says that, look, something has happened and nobody really knows, but something has happened. There is another set of opinion which says this is a Pakistani false flag attack, with all due respect to people like Najam Sethi, that the Pakistanis have deliberately created this fear that, there is some nuclear fallout or something or there. How do you make sense of what has been happening on that particular issue and any other issue you want to
I'd like to make some.
Nirupama, sorry, but I'll just come to you after this, after Manoj.
No problem.
You see, the first point I'd like to make is that, the overall thing, one of the things that you have to understand is that the Indian integrated air defense system functioned very well. Now, this is something which has taken time coming up. And that is why what you see is that you have virtually, I think today one lady died, she had been injured in a drone thing. But besides her, there has been no casualty from the Pakistani air offensive, no civilian casualty. See, so the integrated air defense system worked well. Number two, in 2019, our missiles were outranged.
Are you saying we haven't lost the S-400 missile system
No.
as the Pakistanis?
What I'm saying is that in 2019 we were outranged by Pakistani missiles. So the point I'm making is that this time, technologically, we had an upper hand with the Scalp, with the Harop. the Harrops, technologically they were better than anything that the Chinese would have offered to these guys. The only thing is the Chinese had the innovative thing that in the PL-15 they were able to use associative ranging using their area AWACS. That is the second thing. Second thing is, third thing is that it also brought home to Pakistan this strategic imbalance, which is this entire thing has played out only in northwest India, but it has played out in all of Pakistan. Meaning from Karachi up to Skardu, Pakistan has seen this thing. In our case, we are sitting in Delhi, nothing, So northwest India, so it brings to Pakistan how limited. Meaning, if you are talking of coercing India, you are able to coerce, at least at worst, get the Dharamsala match cancelled. But beyond that, there was very little happening. So I'm saying this is a lesson for Pakistan in the future. The depth of India. The third thing, of course, is the moral political thing, which we were not able to get across adequately, that we were reacting to a perpetrator, that someone had done something. So in various interviews that I've been doing, especially with people from abroad, I've been trying to tell them what were we expected to do. When 26 people get butchered in a meadow in Kashmir, what exactly were our options? And I think it's very difficult to come up with any option to say, you should be restrained, you should be this, you should be that. So the moral political edge was with India. I hope that we can, in the coming days, in terms of strategic communication, put this across, that this is the thing, that when a country has been suffering from terrorism from Pakistan since the 1980s. I began my career as a journalist covering Punjab. And I've retired a long time ago, and still the terrorism from Punjab is
embers of that.
Coming up. No, but terrorism meaning organized, supported by the system, being thrown at us at various points in time, which is ridiculous. Meaning, what does a country do in these circumstances? So the Indian moral political standing in this is something which we need to do. Third thing, when you talked of the nuclear thing, this is very interesting, because the nuclear, both of us are nuclear powers, everyone knows it. In fact, Pakistan reputedly has 25 more nuclear weapons than India has. The issue is doctrine. The Indian doctrine is very clear. Indian doctrine is that we are no first use. We will only use nuclear weapons if there is a nuclear, chemical or biological attack against us or our forces anywhere in the world. That's the Indian doctrine. Pakistan doctrine is somewhat hazy, because Pakistan says India is the only enemy, meaning their nuclear weapons are not there for anyone else. It's only for India. And secondly, the doctrine says that if the country, so it's quite vague, meaning Khalid Kidwai, sort of has articulated this, that if Pakistan loses significant territory, if Pakistan is being strangulated economically, if Pakistan is being destabilized. So all these will be the reasons where Pakistan will use nuclear weapons. So this is their official doctrine. Now, in the present circumstances, Western countries, particularly the United States, are concerned. And I don't blame them. Because, if India and Pakistan nuke each other, the whole world is affected. It is a fact. It is a fact that the two countries nuke each other, no matter where they are in this world, it will affect the entire globe. So their concern I can understand. And I think that in this case, the United States, as per its past, after the first 2 or 3 days, if you looked at Rubio's statements, basically he was saying, you guys, de-escalate. That was his initial this thing. Then later on, on the 9th, I think he started saying, we will help you to de-escalate. So it went one notch higher. And I think at some point, this nuclear thing came up. The one was the Indian strike on the Kirana Hill. Now, we may call it a misstrike or whatnot, but it was hit. And the Kirana Hills, 20 kilometers from Sargodha, is a site where they keep nuclear weapons. You spoke of Malir. Malir also is a place where nuclear weapons are stored. So there were sites, or Noor Khan, which is next to Rawalpindi. So when these were hit, I think the nuclear temperature started going up globally. And the United States did act on this. Now, I know that there are a lot of controversy about what my simple answer is. The US brokered the ceasefire, but the Indians and the Pakistanis activated it. And the sequence is that once the US came up with this, the Pakistani we had called the Pakistani DGMO on May 7th to tell him that we are striking at terror targets. We called him. So he returned our call only on May 9th, May 10th. Huh? So he returned our call. So that was taken by, that we said was that the Pakistanis called us, and so therefore we responded. My simple point is the US did play a role in brokering the ceasefire. The problem with the US thing is that US is now hyphenating India and Pakistan, number one, and number two, threatening to mediate. Both are big no-nos as far as India is concerned. But when it comes to the nuclear thing, the specific question you asked me, so one was this strike on Kirana Hills. Second was this aircraft which was spotted there, which was the Beechcraft, which used to belong to the US Energy Department and used to look after nuclear security. But the point is, this aircraft had been retired 10 years ago in 2010 and had been transferred to the Pakistan Air Force. So this aircraft happened to land, and someone in flight radar checked it up and they found the US nuclear safety, this thing. So that started the fear that this Kirana Hill, and it landed in Sargodha. So the fear was that something had happened, that Indian strike had actually hit a nuclear thing, and nuclear radiation was therefore coming out as a big danger. So all this got mixed up, misinformation, disinformation, etc., combined to make this. Now the question comes, and then comes Prime Minister Modi day before yesterday, which is when he says that nuclear threat is no longer going to deter us. So there's a doctrinal shift, which I think was brought out. And this doctrinal shift is extremely important. This is extremely important for the simple reason that for all these years, from the 80s till Parakram Mumbai, the Indians have been worried about this nuclear thing. Now I think it has become amply clear to Pakistan that Indians have decided that there is a space, we used to call it the nuclear overhang. We have decided that there is a space between a nuclear war and a terror strike, and there is a space in which we can strike back at the terror camps.
But would that not have become clear at the time of Balakot? Or that didn't sink into the Pakistani heads? They were too obtuse to accept that India had already established that thing.
You see, the thing in Balakot is that we missed the target.
Whether we missed the target or not.
I'm just saying that the Balakot thing was not, the total message got confused, because it got confused with the Balakot. First, you missed the target. Secondly, the pilot getting shot down, and then that other sub-crisis emerging out there. But in this case, there's a completely coherent response. There's a coherent response.
And
which
going up the escalation ladder.
There's a very coherent response, and with a signal, because that the spokesman yesterday said that Kirana Hills, we didn't strike it. Actually, we could have struck it deliberately. It's entirely possible, and that it is a message.
You want to say something?
Just one important context to what Manoj is saying is that we have an India-Pakistan treaty from 1988, 10 years before we went nuclear, on a nuclear CBM, which says we will not strike each other's nuclear facilities, and that we exchange
civil facilities.
But facilities with nuclear weapons or facilities, nuclear facilities.
I don't
Let's say
think
nuclear
with
weapons. Okay, nuclear facilities, and we exchange lists. Now, Kirana Hill is not part, as I understand.
Obviously.
I'm just asking Manoj. Kirana Hills is not part, so it's not a declared nuclear site asking India not to strike. So I'm just adding that context and asking you.
That's clearly because they are we are not going to tell them where we keep our nukes. They are not going to tell us where they keep their nukes.
No,
I must say that we keep our secret much better, because there are photographs of Pakistani nuclear, the Malir cantonment. I have a photograph of where the site is. and you will not get a picture of any Indian site.
The larger issue, in my view, this nuclear thing. See, when I was a captain, Sundarji was the chief. He used to speak of nuclear matters everywhere. Then the Indian Army at some time decided that this nuclear stuff should be kept to few in the SFC. So it was not discussed over years. So what has happened, I hope it's not a strong term, but nuclear illiteracy has developed. People don't understand and just bandy terms here and there. Whereas that is one domain, Sushant, where you have to really read. Pakistan's SPD is lifelong once you get into SPD. Now I'll tell you the problem here. So, of course, there are red lines in nuclear. But those red lines can't be that Kaduchak, you have not even crossed the IB and Kidwai flashes the nuclear thing. So a good military, good generalship demands that you so orchestrate your forces that you keep it shy of the red lines. That we are confident of doing. There are many ways of doing that. And one more thing I will just finish here, this restraint. This restraint business had become an attribute of high intellect. Just one thing. He says, the most taxing challenge during Parakram was to get India's military chiefs to recognize restraint as a strategic asset for avoiding conflict. Now, this is the defense minister. This restraint became such a word that the military, itself would say we won't strike.
Sir.
In that context, I'll get back. Both these things have to be understood in depth. What restraint, when restraint, what the nuclear stuff. These issues are not debated deep enough. And then you come to these ridiculous conclusions. Today when I read what Mr. Jaswant is writing, it sounds very distinct to me. But this was the tone and tenor of those times.
No, but with all due respect, in India, I think if somebody speaks with a deep baritone voice and the accent is right, we tend to attach a lot of gravitas to it. And that need not necessarily be the case. And we attach a lot of intellectualism to it. But Nirupama, thank you so much for your patience. And I'm sure you understand, the times that we are living in. But let me just come to you and ask you. You have been in Pakistan 4 years. You have subsequently kept in touch. You have interacted with the journalist community out there, and there was a time when the journalists were able to report or even comment somewhat independently. What we have seen this time around is Pakistani journalism turn into denialistan. There is a kind of denialism that is pretty stark, if you ask me. Also, unlike the surgical strikes in 2016 or the Balakot strikes in 2019, when ISPR would take out busloads of journalists to the various sites, nobody has taken any journalist to any of the sites that India says we have hit. And nobody is asking any questions. What do you think is happening in the media space in Pakistan right now? Nirupama, the floor is yours.
No, as you said, yes, the media space is controlled. But I'd just like to say first that I'm not really depending on media for my information. And my information has been also, Ambassador Bisaria has spoken about it. That the strike has really strengthened Asim Munir. Ambassador Bisaria said it's temporary, but only time will pronounce a judgment on that. Because now already people are, the topics of discussion have changed. Imran Khan is not on the radar anymore. Nobody is talking about him. PTI, in fact, is saying that now perhaps Asim Munir will reach out to Imran Khan and maybe they will form a hybrid government. The question is, why would Asim Munir now reach out to Imran Khan? Because he's now very powerful. He and the Air Force chief especially are being feted as heroes. And The other thing that has happened, from what I hear, is that they are sending out the information that, look, in Sindh, especially, where there's a huge water problem, and they were building canals, and and there were protests about diversion of water due to these canals. There was now the talk apparently is not about the canals. Now people are being told that India is actually stopping your water by keeping the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. So obviously, this is what happens in a conflict, and this is what happens in war. Each side does what it has to do, but in this case, the kind of the efforts that were being made to for a political change or for political transformation, whatever those were, underground efforts or efforts abroad, have all sort of now ground to a halt. And we'll see what happens in November when Asim Munir gets his extension. He's already signed on for 2 more years. I mean, that's there. And I think the only thing now is to see whether he gets 2 more years. And or not 2 more years, any number of more years, really, which the government may, in its wisdom, grant him. So that is one. Sorry?
He's already got an extension till 27.
Yeah. No. So that is pakka. Now it has to be, there is a process to do that, right? The government has to tell the president, and the president will do it, right? So that is there. That he will get. But beyond that, whether he gets more beyond that, that is the question. And the other thing is, of course, you spoke about Balochistan, and there are fears that there will now be an intense crackdown in Balochistan, more intense than there has been before, and that sympathetic voices within Pakistan for Baloch nationalism will also quieten down. There'll be no sympathy now, because India is now the arch enemy, and that's how it is. So this is what there is. And I think actually what we have to, I mean, I listen to everybody here, very interesting. But what I also think we have to do is wait for more information to come out from both sides. I think not all information has come out. Some of you may be privy to more information than I am. But I still think that much of it has to come out in the public realm for it to actually be assessed properly for what really happened. Some of you obviously seem to know more. So I'll just end there if there's nothing else.
Nirupama, if I might just ask you a follow-up, just let me just clarify once again. They've already passed a law which...
Yes, I know that.
But that there is no extension coming up right now. He's already got extension till...
No, in November, that process has to be gone through. It's not...
It's a done deal. It's a 5-year term now for an army chief, a serving...
Yes, it is. But that formality has to be gone through still in November, is my understanding.
Anyways, the question, however, is... I just wanted to understand from you, what do you think is happening inside Pakistan, where there is absolutely no questions being asked about what has happened? In the sense that nobody's asking, have 11 air bases been hit? Nobody's asking what happened to our air defense systems. None of those questions are being asked. So it's very easy to take pot shots at Indian media, but what about the Pakistani media? All these people who love talking about the Indian media, the Hamid Mirs and the Sethis and the other characters out there, somehow none of them seem to have the guts to talk about what's happening in their own country. What do you think is underway? Is it just fear? Or
Pakistani media was already gagged. It didn't need the war to gag it. It didn't need this conflict to gag it. It was already gagged. Very few people were actually taking on the army for anything. And in a time of conflict with India, there is a solidifying of people behind the army. Sareen, Sushant, you have to understand that. It's the same here. Everybody has massed behind the army. Nobody is questioning, right? So even there's no questioning there. It's the same thing. This happens the world over. Everybody supports their militaries. And I think that's what's happened there as well. There is, and as I said, even before this, there were very few people who were standing up to the military. And in any case, when it comes to India, Pakistan, the Pakistani elite have always been in denial. I was there in 2008. In 2008, people were telling me that, no, these guys came from your Punjab. No, this is not our Punjab. Until the Guardian broke that story. Geo had the story of where these guys had come from a week before Guardian broke the story, but they could not release it. They could not come out with it. So they sat on it. Guardian then broke the story, and then they released the story. Sunday Guardian, if I'm right. And then it was that Geo said, this is our story. We went there. So you see, when it comes to militant groups, when it comes to these terror camps, when it comes to all the stuff that's happening, all the toxic stuff that's happening in Pakistan, there is a disconnect. There's a complete denial, if you can call it that, or a disconnect. No, this is not happening here. These guys don't do stuff that you think they do. So I think that is well known, and we don't have to argue about that. Right? And you saw Najam Sethi call it a false flag. People were calling Talat Hussain, his name is, who's a journalist. I know that he did a whole program on why those guys who came to Mumbai were wearing a red thread on their hands. They're red thread, so they're Hindus. So they're all a false flag.
He also did a program where he said Kasab had been arrested in Nepal by the Ra, and Ra had brought him to Delhi from there. So he is that kind of a journalist. Everybody knows what kind of a journalist he is. But Soumya, you and General Shukla had a point, so please go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to something which Nirupama highlighted about how media is questioning the army there, and so were they questioned. Media in India was also questioning the armed forces. But the difference between the two nations and the army of the two nations is we followed a very professional method of communication. Even when we talked about Stratcom, I feel, thank you to General Shukla, who reminded me of the role played by the armed forces when it came to strategic communication. And also throughout the operation, from day one till last day, every day there was a press briefing where we were going with evidence, with satellite imagery, which was unbiased in nature. And we talked to the audience. There were journalists who were actually asking questions in flesh and blood. So it's not that they were, they gag and they let's leave them alone, because that's their nature. But if we are comparing the two armies, then we must recognize that how proactively the armed forces were here, the tri-services when I speak. So that's what I wanted to say actually. Thank you.
Shukla?
Sometimes, because of the way the information cycles run, we come to premature wrong conclusions. Like on that first night, I think Air Marshal Jahangir, what is his name, that guy? Huh? Who was doing all that? Aurangzeb. So he gave a lovely...
Same family, sir.
Same family. He gave a lovely theory of PL15 and J10 and AVIX shares rising. But if it was so good on the first night, what happened on the second, third night? And now they have said that...
out of syllabus.
Out of syllabus. So Sari airfields are air-launched missiles. This is what the Pakistan DGISPR said. So the theory to me appears that once we did SAD, our aircraft are operating with impunity. And us din keh rahe the AVIX shares upar ja rahe hain, the Chinese company. Today they have fallen by 10%. So you have to wait for some things to settle down. So on current evidence, it does seem to me, and here I must say, this whatever you call it, 4-day affair, has been won by air power, Indian Air Force. The way they hit, and the AD wall surprised me. I thought our AD was weak. The S-400s and the Akash Tir and all, they have been very resilient. So my preliminary thing is this is an air war. We have really done well in the air power domain.
Okay, let me just
Shan, can I say something, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a point about that nuclear thing as well. I think there was also the turning point really was the time when they called a meeting of the National Command Authority, or is it the Nuclear Command Authority? And then there was a denial. The meeting, I don't know if it took place, but there was a denial that it was ever called, and that and the defense minister there, Khwaja Asif, said that we shouldn't even think about calling such a meeting. But I think that was very savvy signaling, if you can call it, from the Pakistan side, that look, we are calling a meeting and we are going to discuss you perhaps what to do next. I think that was the alarming intelligence that the US media is talking about, which was received by the people in the White House that were monitoring this whole thing. And that's when the US intervention really picked up. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I'll just repeat again that there isn't yet, no, what I want to say really is, till we talk about victory and defeat and stuff like that, it would be best to wait for information so that sometimes, we can convince ourselves about so many things, that what Sushant said at the beginning, that what can we learn from this? What can we learn from all this? That somehow gets drowned by the rhetoric of, or the statements and the repeated statements that, yes, we won this, we won this. They're saying the same thing. We won this. They're celebrating. They have called it Yome, sorry, the Urdu word is escaping me now, but it starts with a T. They have taken out a Julus. It's huge. It was huge the other day. And Shahbaz Sharif is now so happy. I mean, it shows on his face. So they are as happy as we are. That's what I'm trying to say. And to decide who gets to be more happier, I think we should wait a bit. I mean, this is okay for the galleries. Okay, yes, we have won, but here this is a very very well briefed crowd, and I think we should be more careful about what we say. That's all I want to say.
And Shukla?
I wanted to make one observation about the Pak Fizaya. They were hailing it all over, ki 65 Fizaya, this time Fizaya. I think why did they started doing this nuclear signaling, this convening of the NCA, was when they saw the Fizaya lying in tatters. Yeah. The last thing was just
if your airfields are taken off and your aircraft can't take off.
No, drone launch pads, air bases, shelter, and the impunity with which they were struck. That is the first thing. And see, now you have to play the same game that your opponent plays. So you convene the Nuclear Command Authority. So I don't know, it's not confirmed, but I think so. We struck Noor Khan and Sargodha in the proximity. So if you play the nuclear card, we are telling you we'll get to your nuclear. So in a normal situation, there was no reason to convene the Nuclear Command Authority at this stage, as per their own red lines. So I think this time, see, what we have really called is this nuclear terror bluff. We have really called it out, and it's for everybody to see.
Okay, I'm just now going to throw it open to the floor. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions, but let me put three very quick questions to three of the panelists. General Shukla, to you. What are the lessons learned, apart from the fact that we can use force? The most important question to my mind is, will we now, have we understood the importance of technology, and will we continue to upscale the technological prowess of the armed forces, or we will say, fine, we have won, great victory, and go back to sleep? So that's to you. Ajay, to you, the doctrine how does it operate on other countries? We have another country on the east. Does it get the message now? Because they were very keen to, when we get into a skirmish with the Pakistanis, to take away the seven sisters. So the Bangladeshis are running up with joy and wanting to lop off a part of India. What is the message for them? Manoj, to you, again, on the doctrine, where does it now put the Indian posturing insofar as countries like Pakistan are concerned? Because once you've enunciated the doctrine, you have to follow it through. Does this mean that we are on the tenterhooks, or does this mean that, well, a salutary message has been given and people can back off? So I'll just take these three quick answers and then I'll open it to the.
Yeah. So just three quick points. If we have rediscovered the utility of force, we must also pay very careful attention to this, that as your foreign policy gets more muscular, you have to make sure that your instrument of force is nourished and the highest states of readiness. Now, that's a humongous challenge. By what I mean, if you're going to stick to this doctrine, next time a terror attack happens at 2 o'clock and you have reasonable, it's them, your attack must go in by the first light next day. That is the real, and it's not easy, that kind of readiness. 2, we should not draw the wrong lessons. Already from yesterday, I've seen some lessons. What are the lessons? So since air power has done so well, we don't need theater commands. I mean, precisely the wrong lessons, because theater commands are just the modern way of fighting wars. Or some very senior people said 2% of GDP is enough. It is not. Wrong lessons. Now, what is my greatest worry? And let me just position it for the wider audience. I think our strategic environment, Sushant, is as grim as Israel. It is grimmer. Look at China. $450 billion is the annual military component of the power differential. Valor is not good enough. We really have to step up our budget, or we will discover, like Europe or somebody else. Look at our military industrial complex. Just come to technology. America, which was negligent of its military industrial system, they don't have 7 days of precision munitions and missiles in Taiwan, and China is manufacturing 10,000 cruise missiles a week. So this technology piece, Atmanirbharta and defense has started well, but we have a huge way to go. This year, at least 20 defense startups should be given orders. The biggest problem, biggest obstacle against defense innovation is the IFA system. This regulation has to go because it is very serious stuff. And the last point I would like to make is, see what comes in the way of military capacities coming in. I've seen it, Ambassador Bisaria, I'd love to, even Manoj Joshi, sir, because I mean, when he started writing, we were kids. This business of, you see, since we are a democracy or economic needs need to be met, we cannot spare money for defense. Everywhere else, economic statecraft, the wisdom of economic statecraft lies in finding the money that you need to spend for defense. The first is a very easy proposition. What did Andrew Marshall do to the United States? He was an economist who found the money. Given our grim environment, we have to find the money. And last point I want to make, why? So that we don't need to war fight. Deterrence is costly, but wars are costlier. So spend so much so that he doesn't do the attack. He will not do the terror attack. And in the China sense, similar logic. We have rebalanced enough. We just give it some technology, a little more money. The Chinese are not illogical. At least your LAC will be secure. The larger gap with China, detente. You have to go into hide and bide, which means wait till you build your capacities. So in an overall sense, if we realize all this, that we are in a very grim strategic environment, we need to invest in defense to secure India's rise.
Ajay?
Okay. So, couple of quick points on what you asked and the lessons. One, what we've been saying and what the media has been saying, I think there's a big misunderstanding. The hyphen is back. The hyphen is not back. The hyphen won't be back. This becomes a disincentive that don't do this kind of thing, you'll get hyphenated with Pakistan. No, the hyphen went in 1999. The moment Clinton took Nawaz Sharif to the White House, scolded him, and asked him to get off the Kargil heights. There again, there was Indian force at play, which had forced his hand, but the Americans supported that move. So the hyphen is not back. Just because a couple of tweets come mentioning India and Pakistan in the same breath, we shouldn't be suddenly feeling that the hyphen is back. The understanding even in this episode in our global diplomacy was that the understanding of the difference between the two countries was very clear in most capitals. Second,
there is a sense of betrayal.
Well, I think it's not a sense
Maybe
that
not at the level of diplomats, seasoned diplomats, but I think there is, if you look at the public space and the public square, there is a lot of anger and a lot of there's this deep sense of betrayal that the Americans have done what they've always been accused of. They are unreliable, they're untrustworthy, and these are people we should be wary of.
Fair enough. There is that sentiment, but as strategic thinkers or strategic community, we ought to be recognizing it for what it is. We know that Trump is often not even reflecting his own administration's views, leave alone US views. And this might be something that he jumped to take credit for. The same movie was played in 2019. What happened was Pompeo took credit, but later, a few months later, when he retired in his memoir, it wasn't that Biden suddenly tweeted, oh, I got the ceasefire done and I got the Indians and Pakistanis to stop fighting. But this is a new kind of Trumpian diplomacy, which we have to accept. But we shouldn't really be demoralized and think, oh my God, the hyphen is back, because you'll see the trade deal, you'll see lots of stuff coming up. And India and Pakistan are different. There is no hyphen. So I think that we should be clear on. The second issue on neighborhood, I think a salutary effect. What you said about some asset of Pakistan in Bangladesh saying take over the northeast states, or another asset.
He's a member of government.
Well, I'm calling him an asset. Another person who might be sitting in Canada, both you and I know Pannu, suddenly says that they can't fly over Punjab. So, this is warfare, and they are activating different assets to try and speak a language. But the more strategic point here is that this will emphasize to the other neighbors that neighborhood first is a grand bargain. Take care of India's security. That is primary, and we'll take care of your prosperity. But don't interfere with India's security. Don't challenge India's security, because India will be tough on any neighbor who is challenging or threatening India's security. And thirdly, the lesson I would say is the diplomacy will now have to match the military strength and be going in consonance with the military strength, and not the other way around, to face security challenges. And finally, to a little defense of the late Jaswant Singh, and of the Vajpayee regime. They went nuclear. Let's not forget it. In 1998, they took the leap. 99 in Kargil, and I know there's a robust debate in military circles that it was wrong of Vajpayee to have restrained the army from crossing the LOC. Equally, Parakram was not the right choice. But remember, 99, 2001 were early days of going nuclear. We were not clear on where the red lines were. There was a great deal of ambiguity. There was sense the Americans were sitting across the other border in Afghanistan. We were supporting that. So there was a sense of saying, watch, restraint, get your objectives by other means. But unconscionable not to have taken those actions in 2008, by which time the red lines had been settled, the doctrines were clear, we should have gone about it. But now, I think we have complete clarity and understanding of Pakistan's doctrine. So this hard action now is something that we need to be doing, and doing even more firmly should there be a terrorist provocation in the future.
Manoj?
Well, my point is that I have a slightly different nuance to this. My point is we have enunciated a new doctrine with regard to nuclear issues. My point is that there's an automatic limitation there. What is what exactly will trigger the next Indian counter move? Meaning, will it be the killing of one person? That means two guys with 10 kilograms of RDX can create an Indo-Pakistan war. So, figuring out exactly where the threshold is not going to be easy, because why I'm saying this is that the reason is that after Mumbai, the Pakistanis, because they were caught, the fingerprints were all over Mumbai. So after that, they very cleverly stopped attacking civilian targets. There was, of course, the Pune bakery attack and all that. But basically, they started avoiding large civilian targets in other parts of India. And their attacks were limited to Jammu and Kashmir. And many of them were limited to police and army personnel. The whole point about Pahalgam was the civilian part. That's what has created the horror of the whole event. So there was the Pakistani did shift their their style of operating, and it is the shift away from that which has created this, which has led to this crisis. Now my point is that where will the new lines be? What will be the new red lines in practical terms? Why I'm saying this is that in 2016, we carried out the surgical strikes in September, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the interesting thing is that in November, there was an attack in Nagrota, the headquarters of the 16 Corps, and there was an attack there. 9 soldiers were killed. Yeah. And we did nothing. I have actually a list of 3 or 4 more attacks. We did nothing. So the whole point with the doctrine of deterrence is that you must act every time. Okay. Now the point is that the every time scenario is rather overwhelming, because in the sense which means that it gives an individual terrorist the right to stoke off an Indo-Pakistan crisis, Indo-Pakistan war. And what is also likely happening in Pakistan right now the state and terrorists are linked. The state runs the terrorists, the Pakistani terrorists, meaning the Pakistan army runs the whole operation. But I envisage a situation where the Pakistani army is going to lose control. Already they lost control of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and some other characters. If the Pakistani army loses control of the terrorists there, and this is the reason why the Pakistan army was present at the funeral in Bahawalpur, I think, no, or Murid-ke, I'm not sure. Bahawalpur. So they were present in numbers openly. Because they are, I think they are right now shivering in their boots that they are at the point where they could lose control of their terrorists. But the problem is it will create doctrinal problems for us. If the terrorists are detached from the state, right now we can take on the state and we can discuss the state, take on diplomacy, military action, etc. But if those terrorists get detached, that's going to be a terrible scenario.
But Manoj, although I think this deserves another debate altogether on how this thing will work. But one, I think we should be very clear. There are no non-state actors in a country like Pakistan. They're all state actors, albeit operating under different labels, but they all operate under... I know. But that is a Pakistani problem. If there are these terrorists running amok, they have to control it. It is not my job to control it. And if they can't control it, then I'm going and hitting them. And then the Pakistan army should not intervene. They should let me do it, which is exactly the message we were giving this time. Yeah, so they should support us, right? We can make it a joint effort. They keep talking about joint inquiries. We can have joint operations. But let me just open this. But the point you raise, I think it's a very valid point. Those limits will have to be, I think the Pakistanis will also test it. And I think we will also have to see how we are going to operate on that. But I think that's a point very well taken. But let me throw this open to the audience. Please identify yourself and whom you want to direct your question to. And please make it a question, not the comments. I think all the commentary which had to be made has been made and will be made in response to your questions. So the floor is open.
I'm Rajiv Sinha, Distinguished Fellow here at the ORF. Pahalgam kind of, if I may so, did surprise us. I think we were surprised. Despite the fact after Balakot, I think we should have had plans in place to say, if something like this happens again, what do we do and how do we retaliate? My question is, if we were surprised, and why was it that we were surprised, and why were adequate plans not in place? Why did, as you just mentioned, General, that we should be able to react within the next 24 hours, not 36 hours, but we took 9 days, or no, in fact, more than 2 weeks to react, right? So that window of opportunity also kind of got elongated, and that gave other players space to play. So my question is, what happened? Did we slip up somewhere, and why? That's the first question. And the second question was to you, Soumya. I don't think ISPR really is as good as you make it out to be. If it was so good, then why do you have a question of consolidation for the Chief of Army Staff? I don't think that, then your argument doesn't make sense at all. Okay? The PTI trollsters are all trained by Ghafoor and his men. And they are better than, the pupils are better than the masters. And the ISPR has not been able to match what the PTI has been able to do to them. So I don't think the ISPR is as effective as you make it out to be. No, I think it's quite in a mess, actually. And they just haven't been able to rise up to the challenge that the PTI has posed to them. That's why the ATP had to do a overseas Pakistanis conference, so that they could get to counter that. Okay. So you know what I mean? That's so. So these are the things I have.
So let me just you just mark your own questions and please.
Cross-border terrorism has become one another chronic disease for us, and we want to become a superpower at least by 2040. So how to manage? Whether we have to spend a lot for military expenditure, and how do we have our support?
Whom are you asking this question, sir?
Through you, anybody can answer. We got diplomatic, because in India we are integrated. Anybody.
Fine.
Including our. The other thing is that how do we shape our Middle East policy in order to win, whether Algeria, there are some people supported us despite Turkey and because South Africa is representing Palestine in the International Court of Justice. We are the counter of NA. Last but not the least.
Sir, please, because we are already out of time now. So I'm extending it by half an hour.
They vanished. So if they become autonomous, are we prepared to protect military or government in case of a dirty bomb? Thank you.
My question is to Ajay sir. Sir, it's been clear that terror and talk can't go hand in hand. But unfortunately, terror and technology do. There are serious suspicions that terror groups may have accessed and leveraged strategic geospatial data to plan such attack in Pahalgam. Don't you think India must future-proof its structural security infrastructure through reframing and distinguishing policies related to such critical strategic elements from policies made for commercial utility of the same, because such dual-use tools are often misused under the guise of legitimate commercial use?
Yeah. General Saab, please.
Much. Sushant, I want to make one comment because
Sir,
that
please,
comment.
we were supposed to break off at 5. No, I am extending it.
Their comment has not been made, so that's why I'm not saying some.
But please don't pull it too much, sir. Keep it brief.
Comment is a comment.
No, but the comment can be for 1 hour, sir. I don't have that much time.
The question about the India's kinetic response had a built-in escalation in it, unlike Balakot, where after the initial strike, we had stated and qualified that no further operations, this is the end of our operation after we struck. This time, we said that if Pakistan attempts any misadventure, then there will be an appropriate response. So the escalation was built in. The question is for Ambassador Ajay Bisaria. This is regarding internationalization. Firstly, can you define internationalization? Because the moment there is a conflict between India and Pakistan and there is a crisis, there is an automatic internationalization. Number two, related to this, on bilateralism, because this is what India insists on bilateralism, when the Pakistan National Security Committee responded on 25th of April to our CCS response of all the non-kinetic punitive steps that we had taken, Pakistan in response had said it reserves the right to hold all bilateral treaties, including Simla Agreement, in abeyance, and please note, till Pakistan stops fomenting terrorism inside Pakistan. So I don't think we should be holier than thou in this matter on Baluchistan. Thank you.
One second. Yeah.
My name is Harsh Thakur. I'm from Hindu College, first year. I had two questions, keeping them very crisp. The first question is this open source people.
Whom are you asking the question?
Entire panel. Anyone can respond.
यार किसी एक से पूछ लो ना, मतलब don't make
Manoj
me.
sir, Manoj sir.
I can't say that you
Correct,
can take your own
correct.
question. Just ask whoever
So
you
sir,
want.
there were two things which were coming out. One was this open source chaps who were going around with this boron theory that Egypt had sent boron.
Boron theory.
Yeah, they were saying that Egypt had sent.
Achha, I thought moron theory. I thought you were talking about Pakistan policy. Yeah.
So they were saying that boron has been sent from Egypt to handle this radioactive leak. So I want your comment on that. And secondly, what is up with these earthquakes which have been happening at a frequent kind of frequency in Pakistan very lately?
My question is with the ambassador and Mr. Shukla. What will be the India's approach if China enters into the war? Yes, something will happen in future. Will it be only at the diplomatic level or it will escalate to the military level? Thank you.
Greetings, sir. I'm Avantika. And my question is to Raj, sir. Could India create a doctrine akin to the Dahiya doctrine, which was Israel's deterrence policy, or maybe a modified version of it in India's, which matches to India's policies?
Yeah. Thank you. My name is Raja Munib. I have two questions, one for Soumya ma'am and one for General Shukla. Soumya ma'am, when are we going to see information warfare being incorporated in our official doctrine to fight a war? Because, we have seen reactions from our side, but Pakistan uses it as a strategic, value to it and fights on it. When are we going to see the same thing coming into our war doctrine as information warfare? General Shukla, second question is, the ceasefire we talk about now, is it more that the Pakistanis basically wanted to come down the escalation radar which we raised, and they're more happy keeping it around the LOC with their artillery fire going on, and this is going to be the new normal? And have we agreed to the de-escalation only to come down to their level of, engagement which you are seeing on? De-escalate, the ceasefire is basically a de-escalation because despite the ceasefire, we saw violations happening. So is it that the Pakistanis wanted us to walk down the ramp and come down to a level of LOC and IB immediate and keep that conflict, limited to that space only? And have we agreed to that kind of a de-escalation model from Pakistan?
Captain Robert van Bruynesse, Netherlands Embassy. I've got a question for General Shukla. How do we know, we talked about red lines for nuclear escalation. How does India know what Pakistan's red lines are? And how can we stop before nuclear escalation?
Hello.
Greeting to all. Bhavishas on this side. I'm a founder of NGO. My question to General Shukla. Sir, during that heat exchange in that early morning, we have the opportunity to do a covert operation POJK. I mean, we have an operation option there. So why we have not done yet that? Because it will give a massive psychological threat to Pakistan. POJK, yeah. And sir, Ajay sir, my next question to you: why China is playing that safe side between India and Pakistan? I mean, we have seen that even though India has strike to that against that Chinese defense that exported to Pakistan, and also Chinese that stock downs. I mean, their stock size down 9%. We have seen that Hong Kong also 2.8%. But what China is playing that much neutral, I mean, in comparison to Turkey or Azerbaijan.
वैसे even Bharat Forge stocks have gone up. Since we're talking about Chinese stocks.
I'm Bipindra. This question is from Ambassador Bizaria. So since May 7th, we have been ramping up the escalation ladder till say the 10th. But all of a sudden, this stoppage of military operations was announced. Apparently, diplomatic involvement from US. Did we buy that NCA meeting gamble that the Pakistanis did? Or was there a real reason, strategic reason for us to accept the stoppage of military operations? What would be your guess as a former top diplomat in Pakistan from the Indian side?
Hello, my name is Arya. My question is to Ambassador Ajay sir, regarding Balochistan. Since Balochistan is really in the offensive against Pakistan in the past few months, what should India do currently in this situation?
That's the last question. I don't think anybody else.
Sorry, just last question.
One second. Then after.
My question is to Lieutenant General Shukla. The ex-CDS had said that India will have to fight in future 2.5 front war. So we discussed about two fronts, Pakistan and China. What about the 0.5 front?
Yeah, I am Praveen Kumar Singh. My question is to Ambassador Bisaria. Sir, the Turkey and Azerbaijan question haven't been discussed. So what's your take on India looking at the trade negotiation and all with these two potentially rogue countries? Thank you.
Okay, so I think we've got all the questions in. Ajay, you go first off the mark.
How much time do we have? 3 hours now?
No, we don't. We have about, I want to finish as early. I'm already 10 minutes over. But, but answer
So
all the questions.
I'm going to take them, all the questions addressed to me quickly. Question of West Asia, India's goal about growing to 2047. So how does India deal with terror? I think what India has demonstrated to the world, to itself, is that it has the capacity to deal with security challenges quickly and not let them interrupt the India growth story, because that is the central story, dealing with China, dealing with Pakistan in a focused way is to basically contain these problems quickly and yet effectively set up a deterrence. On the question of terror and tech going together, geospatial data available to terrorists, I think this will always be an issue. This wasn't really a high-tech operation in Pahalgam. You having a few people with machine guns fighting, killing innocent tourists was operationally not a very hard thing. So what we have to do is maximize this counter-infiltration and the counter-terrorism grids and work in multiple domains to strengthen intelligence and security, and that, I'm sure, will be the lesson learned. On the question of internationalization of Kashmir, how do you define it? How does India define it, or what is it? Well, what internationalization looks like is what we had in the 40s and 50s. And what Pakistan wants is this matter to go to the UN and perhaps have a UN resolution. So I think none of that is happening. It is only Pakistan's fantasy that this becomes an international issue, because for India, it's a domestic issue. It's not something that's going to be talked about. the India-Pakistan issue becoming international. Of course, it will be international when there's a conflict between the two countries. It's as international as Ukraine and Gaza and so on, and the world will be concerned and they'll jump in. The question would be how much of our diplomacy works in persuading the world that we have a right to take action against terrorism, and we'll do that each time. On the question of China, again, that will require another whole session, but in a sentence, China this time was not involved, you're right, in any of the military action in any great length, as in terms of statements, in terms of postures, even in terms of the support to Pakistan internationally, UN, it was minimum. So China didn't want to get involved. Of course, Pakistan is armed to the teeth with Chinese weapons. On the escalation ladder from May 7th to 10th, again, I don't think it's right to interpret the ceasefire as something externally imposed. In each step of the escalation ladder, India made to Pakistan a de-escalation offer. On the 7th of May, our DGMO told Pakistan, we've struck 9 bases, we are done. If you want more action, we'll do more action. But if you do nothing, we might be done with this. And each stage, if you see the statements coming out, the official statements, they were saying the action is over and the de-escalation offer is on the table. So what happens on the 10th of May was clearly the Pakistan side suing for peace after being really hammered in the attacks on the 10th of May in 11 bases and so on. So the external diplomacy was really supporting the Indian use of force, which got Pakistan on the table. On Balochistan, what should we do? Balochistan is already on the boil. It's sensing the weakness of the Pakistan army. And Turkey and Azerbaijan, again, there are multiple diplomatic and other levers for them to escalate the cost for these countries to supply these weapons to Pakistan, and I'm sure those will be used.
Well, I think I had one question. The issue of boron, and I think that's just see, one of the features of this entire thing was the level of misinformation and disinformation that was circulating, trying to figure out what is true, what is not true. For example, there's a whole report that 4 Indian aircraft were shot down on day 1. To my mind, that's true. But to determine whether it's true or not took me a whole day. Meaning from contacts to pictures to deciding whether this picture is accurate or not accurate, etc. So this is a feature of this new situation. Now you have Pakistani people putting on the internet a thing where it shows that two bombs on the runway of an Indian airfield. But if you look at third party, for example, if you look at Maxar pictures, there's nothing there. So what I'm saying is that what we have to do, and I teach a class to Asian College of Journalism on this, on defense and security. And my message is basically your job, meaning the journalist's job, is to determine to the extent possible. Because there are people out there trying to completely undermine, to capture the narrative. And I think Soumya has just outlined the ways and means, the technology that goes into that. So this whole business, someone is talking about boron, someone has taken this Beechcraft. Now, you have the methodology. For example, you have flight radar. Through flight radar, there's an individual aircraft. You can make out that this is the origin of the aircraft. This is the nature of the aircraft. This is where it was originated from. This is where it's going. So you have a lot of OSINT going. But the problem with OSINT, and I think Mr. Sinha will tell you, the problem with OSINT is that it cannot really substitute for intelligence, meaning actual actionable intelligence, which only the professionals can really get at.
Soumya?
I was given one question and one comment. So to the comment, sir, when I am talking about the characteristics of ISPR, in no manner I am praising them. I'm rather saying that they are so ingrained into this whole offensive operations. And where we lagged, we have seen that we did react, but we reacted late. So we need to take some kind of a lesson that how proactive we need to be. And in that manner, I said, and when you talked about public relations were handled very well when it comes to projecting how the Pakistan armed forces handled the situation. They were kind of overpowering us when it came to number of tweets, number of reactions, and so on and so forth. This brings me to the question of when will we have a doctrine? I would say rather than having just a doctrine, we should have it in action. And maybe this is already a part of our theaterization discussion and discussion on modernizing the armed forces, that we need to have information warfare agency which is more coordinated and is both offensive and defensive in nature. So rather than having it lost in somewhere in words of doctrine, I rather have it in action on ground.
Last word, General Shukla. And a lot of words, I think, coming from your side.
So there are 6-7 questions. I'll try and answer them as honestly as possible. First to yours, sir. I mean, did something go wrong? Obviously. So if nothing had gone wrong, this wouldn't have happened. But see, I would like to make this point. What we have changed this time is, for him, for a long time, terror was a low-cost option. Keep sending 60 groups, 3-4 will get through. Something happens, now watch the fun. Now turn the needle of the debate in democracies. One is nuclear, and the West will also come right in, subcontinent, nuclear subcontinent. Second is intelligence failure. तो मतलब जुल्म वो करता था, शर्माए हम जाते थे कि भाई intelligence failure हो गया, ये वो. And so this was it. Now we have turned it into a high cost option. You choose, you want to push 2 groups, you will have to bear what happens to Noor Khan and all that. It's not perfect. He may recover from it after a while. But for this time, some kind of deterrence has been re-established. We'll have to reinforce it. See how things go wrong. I'll tell you, I was the GoC in Baramulla when Mohra happened. I just took over 2 weeks later from Anil Chauhan when Mohra happened. Now, how do you pinpoint responsibility in Mohra when there is a section, there are 2 HHTIs, the guys who are there just knock off. They just knock off and the group comes. So do you hang the brigade commander? Do you hang the CO? Do you hang those 2 guys? So sometimes it becomes difficult like that. But when people are, delinquent, they are punished. In the army, nobody gets caught free that way. So that already happens. Already I'm telling you, there'll be great pressure there on people. The whole geometry of the whole infiltration would have been traced. But I'm just distinguishing this from that larger thing of intelligence failure. Because if 60 groups are being sent across, 2 will get across. And like I'll tell you, the Riyasi hua tha pishle November, October. So what happened? They fired at the bus. Thank God that bus rolled. If that bus had halted, 40 Hindus would have got killed. It would have been Pahalgam. Thank God that bus rolled. So, in that sense, if you say it's a surprise attack and all, so this has to be tackled in 2 ways. One is by hitting them across, and the other is counter-infiltration, grid and all, whole thing. All those things need to be done. The other issue of, how much should we spend and all that. See the larger technology and all. See, I think we have to take note of 2 things. In 1990, Bill Clinton said it's the economy stupid. Today you ask me it's national security stupid. Look at what's happening. In fact, before this happened, I used to go everywhere and say, look at Europe, look at West Asia. We are in a peace dividend. Let's invest. And there this happens. Now we are in a similar mess. So this is the point. There's a major swivel. Now we have to decide. What do we want to do? Europe thought this peace forever. Today, Russia, a $2 trillion economy, is beating a $41 trillion economy West. So that traditional wisdom of not spending enough on defense is exactly what I have a problem with. You have to see what you need to spend in defense, because if you don't, you'll ultimately be forced to spend that much. Look at Germany and all those issues. Look at technology. I'll just give you one data set to tell you how things can change dramatically. If you see all these emerging technologies, AI, blockchain and all that, and all of them lie at the cusp of civil-military fusion. There's not a technology which is a civil technology, it doesn't have a military application. 2003 to 2007, the sole superpower USA
leads in 60 out of 65. Then China does this diaspora strategy, 1,000 talents plan. It is mind-boggling. 2019 to 23, China leads in 57 out of 65. Look at the dramatic conversion. I'm saying in that same ASPI tracker I'm quoting from, there are 10 technologies where India is third or somewhere around. Can we take these 10 and in the next 8 years push? All of them will have direct civil military uses. I'll just quoting to you one Mr. Panchanathan, who's the boss of the American Science Foundation, not a uniform guy. I was surprised. He says, we, American Science Foundation, are the offensive arm of Pentagon. Without us, Pentagon is mere defense. This kind of thinking has to come into India. China's chip industry and ships are entirely civil military fusion. Now to get this mindset change in India itself is going to take, so these are the issues of that. Things go wrong. Of course, now I've seen that Maxar had said that 2 months back, Pahalgam imagery, somebody missed it. Yes, it was a very, now whom do you pinpoint blame? So these are very complicated issues. This is China collusivity. See how it happens. It's not whether when we are dealing with Pakistan, China attacks. That's not the real issue. I'll give you a live example since now it's public. Before 26/11, 2008, Indian Army had done an exercise called Divine Matrix, where we said the Chinese threat is more than Pakistan. We were to rebalance majorly. Then 26/11 happens. If 26/11 happens, you got to be here. Now, when you are oriented to Pakistan, Galwan happens. You rebalance after Galwan. This is how you get caught in this collusivity trap. It is not physical manifestation. That's not the real worry. Today, in all this stuff, they would have got all their 44 Baidu satellites. They would have got all non-kinetic assistance, space, chase and all that. So this is what we have to deal with, this in that collusivity thing. And now today, may I point out, Bangladesh is a new national security reality. It's no longer in the realm of that. Look at the seas. That 400 ship navy is not going to patrol the Chinese coastline. It's here. So our challenges are, bloody grim. What else do I say? Sorry for that word. They are this. We really have to, in that sense, that is this business of, treaties and all that. I was surprised. Wang Yi said, we are so close to Russia, we need no treaties. We'll give them everything. And we'll get caught off in Indus and all that thing with that. 90% of legacy chips, 70% of CNC equipment has been given by China to Russia. Russia would be nowhere in the Ukraine conflict without China. Similar China-Pak. They've got their entire inventory is China. Their ammunition supplies from their artillery, everything is Chinese. So actually you are already fighting a two-front war. So this is the whole problem of, this thing has to be understood. Somebody said Israel. We will take decades to become Israel. If you want to become Israel, you have to have a unit called 8200, 9300. What does it do? People are picked up from high school, the best minds, brought rock star level pay. You stay 3, 4, 5 lifetime. That fashioned pagers. It was a project 10 years in the offing. That with Mossad. So if we decide to become Israel today, there seems to be unanimity. Then 20 years hence, we will be Israel. I wish we were. But in my view, the challenges are as grim, but it's going to take a long, long time. This business of, I am very convinced on the information with me so far. The Pak DGMO came screaming for assistance when he knew he was hit. Now Trump tweeting and all is all over. It's all over all this. But the primary reason to halt secession was they were hit very badly, so badly that I'm surprised. So that I think is that's my thing. This business about POK, even the Prime Minister's talked about it. But if you have to take POK through military investments, it'll take 15, 16 divisions. I've been just there. I was GoC in Baramulla. So do we want to invest in 15, 16 divisions or do we want to project power across Malacca? So we have to balance all these things. I would rather, if somebody takes my advice...
And it's a dump anyways.
A dump, what do you want it for? And it's breaking in any case.
Yeah.
So it's okay to pose the question to them that if you talk of this, we are talking POK, but militarily we'll have to see it in...
No, sir. I was just asking to grab a land something because this morning it was a very intense end of fights also happening in some disclosed location.
should we have an opportunity?
Yeah. If you were to seriously grab POK, there'll be a lot of attrition. So, how, in my view, war fighting has changed to non-contact kinetics, where you can get the same stuff. So we have to take those. In fact, today I'm an army man, but I'm saying doctrinally we have to see, and the army has to see. Today, what is our response to terror? Armor, mech-based response, strike code. It's not working. You have to see, should we wind down these strike codes and invest in other things? Now, everybody has to answer these questions honestly. In my view, it's not working. I would rather invest in a drone missile force. Let me say our AD has done well against Pakistan. The Chinese have the most sophisticated instrument of long-range precision. Our AD is nowhere. Look what the Israeli AD is. So AD topology, stealth-based offensive air power. You cannot penetrate enemy defenses today without stealth. China's J-20s, in my view, I don't know what you think, Sushant, in 1 year will be with the Pakis. See how the equation will change. He'll be back in the game with J-20s. So it's all very complicated, So these are the things to take. The last point I'd like to make, we should start pushing for this argument also when we talk of nuclear and all. All these problems will get solved if the Pak military submits to civilian control. The problem is there. We have a professional military, perhaps a little better than what we were 20 years back, but firmly under civilian control. Their problem is a blundering military and no civilian control. So that is another issue that we must press.
Sir, I think I agree with everything you've said throughout the day, except the last point. I don't think that's going to happen. So let's not even go down that road. But yeah, Madi, and this is the problem with all our strategies, that at the end of the day, we start making, these wishful thinking. So please give it up, be realistic. You stay in the realistic domain. That'll be better. But thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot, General Shukla, Manoj, Soumya, Ambassador Bisaria, and of course, Nirupama is not here now. But thank you very much. I thought it was a fabulously, you guys gave fabulous comments. And thanks a lot. And thanks everybody to the audience for your patience and forbearance for lasting for 2 hours. Thank you. And thanks a lot to my colleagues at ORF, Komal, Shivam, and of course Aditya, people who put together this whole thing. Thanks a lot.